thank you once again for giving us the freedom to assemble ourselves together and congregate and obey your commandments, to follow the Shabbat, to make the set-apart day holy by keeping it according to your commandments, by not doing our own pleasure on the Sabbath day. And you promise us that if we delight in you, you will give us the desires of our hearts. And we thank you for the privilege of knowing and understanding your holy Torah, the source of wisdom. And we thank you for the Jewish people who have preserved the methods and the study and the compilation of the study of the Torah. And we are so grateful and full of gratitude for the research of the rabbis. And may you enlighten us more, open our eyes to the wonderful things of your Torah. This we pray in Yeshua's name. Amen. So, alam mo, each Shabbat, I would, before the Shabbat, every week I would meditate on things that is not so clear to me about, everything, about life in general, and especially yung mga situations na ano bang masasabi ng Torah sa sitwasyon. Kasi given that Torah is the source of wisdom, there must be an answer to every question that we have. Because the Torah is a universal guidance for human beings. So, on planet Earth, not on planet Mars. So today's lesson is going to be, which is a series, of course, that means maraming part 1, part 2, part 3, on the 613 Mitzvot, commandments, more particularly on governance. So, kingdom, governance, and more specifically, the leadership and management style of Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher Moses, the prophet Moses. So this is academic. Ako, every time I study Torah, I would be surprised that how come I didn't, notice it before, because the meaning are hidden in Hebrew words. Most of the time, in plain English, it looks very common, but in Hebrew, it means the other way around. So that's why I would like to thank the rabbis for preserving this knowledge of the Torah. No? So let me double check. This is recorded. Okay. Next page. Oops. Start. Ay. Wala last page. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So, our Goshen updates would be later. So, just to give you an idea, ito yung mga huwag na bakas. Ano ito eh. So, this, alam mo, nothing is new under the sun, like my prayer na kanina. The Jewish people have been known to be the people of the book for thousands of years. They are the keepers of the Torah. They have compiled a deep academic knowledge and interpretation of the Torah. So in this case today, this article comes from the chief rabbi of Great Britain, the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. No? So he writes, he has a book called Leadership based on Torah. So mga veterano na po itong mga rabbi na to. Just imagine the chief rabbi of Great Britain. So that means, I'm not saying that original ako. I'm not original in the Torah. I'm just a student of these rabbis who have spent all their life studying the Torah. So that we don't have to start from scratch, no? So, This comes from Parashat Yitro, Exodus 18 to 20, which is entitled A Nation of Leaders. So it started with Parasha, Moses' father-in-law, giving Moses his first lesson in leadership. In the second episode, the prime mover is God himself, who at Mount Sinai made a covenant with the Israelites, known to be the day of the giving of the Ten Commandments. And the first and only time in history that God Elohim, Yahweh, appears to an entire people, making a covenant with them and giving them the world-famous code of ethics, the Ten Commandments. So in Mount Sinai, through Moses, Prophet Moses, gave the Israelites a mission statement. By the way, huwag kayo matakot dyan kay David, kasi taga-China yan, pero yung asawa niya matagal nating kasama since 9-10 years ago. So I'm glad you're back, David. You study here, you listen. You understand English, di ba? Yeah. Oh. So the mission statement is to become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation under the sovereignty of Yahweh alone. So this is something very unique, no? Unlike the other cultures in ancient times. They were to create a society built on principles of justice, human dignity, and respect for life. Hence, the remarkable project of the Torah is to translate the historical experience. The historical experience is the Exodus in Egypt, the Exodus from slavery after 400 years, the march to freedom, and the receiving of the law in Mount Sinai, which happens on the day of Shavuot, on the day of Pentecost. So, ang tawag nito ay historical narrative. So behind the historical narratives are mga details. So what the Rabbi Sachs called vision and details. So the historical experience, that's why, alam mo, the commandment of Passover, what does the commandment of Passover says? You shall remember every year that God freed you from slavery to Egypt. So it is a command, actually in the Torah, to reenact the Exodus in Egypt. So that means the historical narrative as if it happened just, parang sariwain ba? Palagi. Because there is a very profound meaning sa... Ay, dito pala si Dio, no? And there's a profound meaning in reenacting the narratives of the Exodus in Egypt, because right after the Parasha Yitro, Exodus 18 to 20, right after that is Parashat Mishpatim, which gives now the details, and nag-umpisa na magbigay ang Diyos. God started to give laws, parang spontaneous law. Do this and do that, don't do this and do that. So what was the purpose of the freedom? Was the vision, sabi nga ni Rabbi Sachs dito, is the details of the vision. The vision is to serve God, to go to the promised land, but what about the details? How will you be able to do that without the law? So, sabi nga na Proverbs 28:19, without vision, the people perish. Happy are those that obey the Torah. Kung walang pangitain, napapahamak yung mga tao, ngunit pinagpala yung mga sumusunod sa Torah. Okay, so Rabbi Sachs entitled this Vision and Details. So sabi niya, Torah actually, sabi niya, is untranslatable. So, that's the problem when the New Testament translate Torah as nomos and law. So, The solution to this translation problem is ganito. Every time you encounter the word law, just translate it into Torah. You are putting back its original essence into the text, no? So, most likely, most Christians do not say Torah, they would just say law. So that's why. But Torah means not just law, but it's teaching, instructions, guidance, more generally direction. It is also the generic name for the 5 books from Genesis to Deuteronomy, comprises of both narrative and law. So in general, law and narrative are 2 distinct literary genres that have very little overlap. Most books of the law do not contain narratives. So that means, ibig sabihin, kung basahin natin ang present ngayon, mundo, the present time, no? Most law legislators, they don't have the narratives compared to what is in the Torah. Ibig sabihin, yung kwento, yung mga kwento sa Torah, bago binigay ang batas. So ngayon, gumagawa, so ibig sabihin, dito yung nagkakaiba sa kwento ng Torah. So, most laws does not have the historical experience before they are being enacted. Sabi dito. Okay. So, Torah is a unique combination of narrative and law. It brings vision in detail. So this is what the Torah makes, sabi nga rito, as an enduring power. It is the model for all who seek to lead people to greatness. That's why we have the 613 Mitzvot. The vision was to establish a nation, a holy people, and to bring them to complete freedom. But how is that going to happen? But otherwise known to be through the law, to the 630 provisions. Ibig sabihin, for the vision to become a reality, God needs to give them the law para ma-implement so that magiging reality. So inevitable po ang law. This is what makes the difference in our study than the Christian. The Christian is, Christian doctrines and New Testament doctrines. So like this rabbi is talagang puro sa Torah to. So the mission statement is to become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Sabi ni 1 Peter 2:5. So 1 Peter, no? You also as lively stones are built up on a spiritual house and a holy priesthood to offer spiritual sacrifice acceptable to Elohim by Yeshua the Messiah. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of Him who had called you out of darkness into this marvelous light. Okay. I would make 2 Tagalog comparison. Yung ang Biblia, King James Version, tsaka yung Magandang Balita Version. Tulad ng mga batong buhay, hayaan ninyo kayo ay maitayo bilang spiritual na bahay tungo sa banal na pagkapare, upang mag-alay ng mga spiritual na handog na kasiyasya sa Diyos sa pamagitan ni Jesucristo. Wari mga batong buhay, maging sangkap kayo ng isang templong spiritual, at bilang ng mga saserdoteng nakatalaga sa Diyos, maghandog kayo sa mga kanya ng spiritual na kalugod-lugod sa Diyos dahil kay Jesucristo. So, taking this from the New Testament, a quotation from Peter, so the New Testament is quoting actually the Torah. He's quoting actually Exodus chapter 19 verse 4, and he is also quoting Leviticus chapter 11. You shall be a holy nation, a holy people. So Christians who does not understand this properly because they don't have a foundation in the Torah. Datapwat kayo ay isang lahing hinirang, mga saserdote ng hari, isang bansang nakatalaga sa Diyos. Pinili kayo ng Diyos upang maging Kanya at maghayag ng kahangahangang gawa niya. Siya rin ang tumawag sa inyo mula sa kadiliman tungo sa kagilas-gilas na kaliwanagan. Dati-rati, kayo'y hindi bayan ng Diyos. Ngunit ngayon, kayo'y bayang hinirang niya. Noon, pinagkaitan kayo ng habag. Ngunit ngayon, sumasa inyo ang kanyang awa. So, ay taga-English dito na wala yung English. So, Peter is actually quoting Hosea chapter 1:6. So the key point here, mga kapatid, is God is talking to a whole nation. Sabi niya, your mission statement, so therefore the calling of Israel is not individual but corporate nation. So if you compare this to the New Testament, it's the same thing. Known as the Great Commission. Go ye, talking to the 12 apostles, actually representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Go ye into all the nations. The same thing. Disciple the nations. But how are you going to disciple the nation? Tell them that Yeshua is the Messiah. Then, teach them the commandments, the torah. The same thing. There's nothing different there. So, Christian would meant to understand that in a way na parang evangelism lang. Parang teach about the death, life, and Jesus Christ. That's it. They are saved. So, mababaw na intindi, no? Elementary. So, going back to why would, Jethro, who is Moses' father-in-law, by the way, who is Jethro? Jethro is not even he was formerly a Midianite priest. Ibig sabihin, he is like a leader in Midian, who is his father, Moses was there for 40 years, no? So he's a leader of the Midianites people. So, sabi ni Rabbi Isaac, kasi in the way you interpret Torah, ganito, if there's two substance or two topic na nagkadikit, merong kailangan, yung tawag yan ay juxtapose. Two items or two concept linked together. So in this case, a Midianite priest telling the prophet Moses how to lead people. So para bang, dapat si Moses ang magturo sa iyo. So sabi ni Rabbi, interestingly, sabi ni Rabbi Isaac, the forms and structure of governance are not specifically Jewish. Okay, Jewish is a term used by the rabbi. No, but actually, I would suggest that whenever I say Jewish, we can also say Hebraic. No? Kasi pag sinabi mong Jewish, for the Jewish people alone. Pero pag sinabi mong Hebraic, it's a general concept of the Hebrew scriptures. No? So, Hebraic is a better term. So, sabi, the structure of governance is a part of the wisdom, kokma, the universal wisdom of humankind. Jewish people have known many forms of leadership. Prophets, elders, judges, kings. Nasi in Israel. Nasi, the president of the Sanhedrin. Nasi is called president. No? Under the Roman rule and the res galuta or the exile of the Jewish people in Babylon by two councils and various forms of oligarchy and by other structures up to including the democratically elected Knesset in the modern times. So, historically, the Jewish people have undergone a lot of Jewish kind of different kinds of forms of governance and leadership. So, sabi ni Rabbi, sack. The forms of government are not eternal truths, nor are they exclusive to Israel. The Torah says about monarchy that at a time will come when the people say, "Let us set a king over us, like all the nations around us." This is the only case in the entire Torah in which Israel are commanded or permitted to imitate the other nations. So there is nothing specifically Hebraic or Jewish about political structures. So ang sinasabi niya is yung ang mga system of governance, a monarchy, oligarchy, democratically, politically, it already exists even before Sinai. Di ba? If you go back to your history class in high school, what I learned from my teacher, he says, Mesopotamia is the home of the earliest civilization, no? Mga Ur, yung Mesopotamia happens to be the, sabi nila mga scholars, the Ur of Chaldeans, the where Abraham grew up. Okay? So, what is specifically Jewish or Hebraic, ito yung emphasis, however, is the principle of the covenant at Sinai that Israel is the chosen people, the only nation whose sole ultimate king and legislator is Elohim himself, Yahweh Elohim himself. Quoting Psalms 147 verse 19 to 20, He has revealed His word to Jacob, His laws and decrees to Israel. He has done this for no other nation who do not know His laws. Hallelujah. Dito. Tagalogin natin. Kay Jacob, pag sinabing Jacob, he represents the 12th tribe of Israel. Binigay ang balita at pabilin ang tuntuning mga aral ibinigay sa Israel. Ang ganitong karapatan ay walang ibang bansa pagkat hindi nila batid ang utos na itinagda. Purihin si Yahweh. So this is what is unique about Israel, that they were given the Torah, comprises of law, decrees, statutes, ordinances, which means the 613 Mitzvot. And this 613 Mitzvot has been given to them and no one else. No other nation, sabi dito. The rabbis would make a story in the Talmud that why was the Torah given to Israel? Sabi ng mga rabbi, mahilig sila gumawa ng mga alamat na kwento. Sabi nila, it was offered to other nations but no one accepted it. Except Israel. No? So, that's God's prerogative, no? So, okay, question. So, given na, talagang sa Israel lang talaga binigay ang Torah. That's why most Christians do not appreciate the Torah because they don't see themselves as really part of Israel. But the Messianic Hebrew roots movement like us and most around the world today, millions and millions of Hebraic roots around the world, starting to discover the Torah and live a Torah lifestyle, at least at the very low end, we accept that we are grafted in. Immigrants. Kumbaga, if you are Brother Marvin is an immigrant to Canada. No? Once he is granted, actually, even before he was still applying for being immigrant, ano yung status before immigrant? Permanent resident pala. If you are a Filipino living in other countries like Canada, is Marvin bound to keep the laws of Canada while in Canada? Yes. Oh. Vice versa. Okay, Philippines. Now he's in the Philippines, back in the Philippines, dual citizen. Dual citizen. He is still bound by the law of Canada, even he is still here. On the other hand, since he is now in the Philippines, is bound by that constitution of the Philippines, he is now under also the law of the Philippines. So the Christians, we are believers of the Messiah of Israel. We are, sabi niyo, we cry, Abba, we are adopted into the commonwealth of Israel. So therefore, are we bound by these laws of the covenant of the Torah to Israel? That's the biggest question. Siyempre, alam nyo na, the Christian does not accept that the law still applies to them, but we believe that the law still applies. So, ito, kaya ko, sinasama yung Bisaya, alam ko naman, sa Manila, hindi tayo mahilig mag-Bisaya. Para lang kung may Bisaya na makarinig, maka-appreciate naman. Ginapakitan niya ang iyang pulong kay Jacob, ang iyang kabalauran, ug ang iyang mga tulumanon kang Israel. Wala niya buhata ang ingon niini sa bisan unsa nga nasud, ug mahigtungod sa iyang mga tulumanon. Sila wala mahibalo kiana. So napakalinaw. The Torah was exclusively given to Israel. But why? Just as solely for them? Or they will teach the nations the Torah?
It's the nations.
So the covenant of Sinai, established for the first time, was the moral limits of power. All human authority is delegated authority subject to overarching moral imperatives of the Torah itself. This is what has always set Judaism apart from the empires of the ancient world and the secular nationalism of the West. So that means, the Torah is actually saying, all authority emanates not from the people, like the democratic authority emanates from the people. Democracy yan. But if authority emanates from the people, how come the government does not consult the people, but just impose laws? Okay. So that's actually mayroong questionable yun. Okay, all human authority is delegated authority. Tandaan niyo yan. Ibig sabihin, ang Diyos lang talaga may authority. Kung nagbigay siya ng 10 Commandments, yan ang absolute authority na yan. Wala nang pwedeng magbago dyan o mas mataas pa dyan. Yan na yan ultimate. So, the delegation, distribution, and democratization of leadership, only God can rule. Okay. Ang sabi ni Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, what you are doing is not good. Loto. Okay, considering the law of the first mention of the word not good, it is only mentioned twice in the Torah here in Exodus 18:17, and the first mention is Genesis 2:18. It is not good for man to be alone. So therefore, no man is an island, sabi nga. We cannot lead alone. We cannot live alone. It is not good to live alone. So, kumaga, God's design ay talagang human beings learn to live with one another in a peaceful way. Okay, this is what the text says in Exodus 18. Sabi ni Moses, when they have a matter, this is verse 16 of Exodus 18. When they have a matter, they come to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make known the statutes of Elohim and the laws from his Torah. Kapag may dalawang tao na hindi nagkakaunawaan, dumudulog sila sa akin, sinasabi ko naman sa kanila kung sino ang may katwiran. Bukod doon, ipinapaliwanag ko sa kanila ang mga utos ng Diyos. Si Moses po nagsasalita. Kapag, King James Version, Tagalog. Kapag sila ay may usapin, lumalapit sila sa akin at aking hinahatulan ng isang tao at ang kanyang kapwa. Aking ipinapaalam sa kanila ang mga batas ng Diyos at ang kanyang mga kautusan. So, how did Moses judge the people? By the Torah. He doesn't say, I think I have to consult mga congressman kung gagawa kami ng bagong batas. He has already, alam niya na yung Torah, binigay na sa kanya eh. In the same way, I think me being a Torah teacher, I call God as a Torah teacher, yan lang din ang ginagawa ko. Saan sa Torah yung sitwasyon? O, ito. Then, look for passage in the New Testament that, similarly, the same concept. So, ibig sabihin, masipag si Moses. Lahat ng mga problema suliranin, talagang dinudulog niya. And the father-in-law of Moses said to him, "The thing which you do is not good. Surely you will wear out, both of you and the people with you, for the thing is heavy for you. You are not able to do it by yourself." Sinabi ng biyanan ni Moses sa kanya, ang inyong ginagawa ay hindi mabuti. Ano bang tawag sa lalaking, biyanan yung lalaki, anak ng asawa niyang babae, si Moses? Anong tawag sa Tagalog niya? Manugang. Manugang. Alam mo, manugang, hindi mabuti yung ginagawa mo. Bakit hindi mabuti? Kasi ikaw at ang mga taong kasama mo ay manghihina sapagkat ang gawain ay totoong napakabigat para sa iyo. Hindi mo ito makakaya mag-isa. Okay? Magandang balita version. Pinahirapan mo ang iyong sarili, pati ang mga tao. Malaking gawain yan para sa iyo at hindi mo kayang mag-isa. Yun po ang advice ng biyanan. Now, listen to my voice. Sabi ni Jethro, I will advise you and my Elohim be with you. By the way, before this thing happened, it says that Jethro offered sacrifice to Yahweh Elohim. That means he is already a believer of the Yahweh Elohim. Nag-convert na siya sa faith niya. Bakit ka mag-sacrifice sa tabernacle? You're not even allowed to sacrifice if you're not a believer. So Jethro has already converted to the Israelite faith. Nung sinabi niya ito, he is no longer a pagan Midianite priest. He has converted. So take note of that, ha? Kasi yung mga Kristiyano sabi, ba't ka makipag-advise, mga unbeliever? And dito may wisdom naman pala ang unbeliever. Bakit? Depende sa unbeliever. Kasi si Jethro, 40 years na leader sa isang lugar. May experience. Mayroong experience. Batikan na sa kapamahalaan nila, no? So, kasi ang Christian kasi, mission panatiko, huwag kang humingi ng advice yan, unbeliever yan. Depende. Yung pala, abogado naman pala yun eh. Hindi kailangan mo advice. Yung pala, matanda na, may karanasan. Pwede ka kumuha ng advice. Depende. Basta yung make maayos na tao. Di ba? So, you bring these people before Elohim and you bring the matters to Elohim. Ngayon, makinig ka sa akin, bibigyan kita ng payo at sumaiyo nawa ang Diyos. Ikaw ang magiging kinatawan ng bayan sa harap ng Diyos. At dalhin mo ang kanilang mga usapin sa Diyos. Pakinggan mo ito, ipapayo ko sa iyo. Ikaw ang lalapit sa Diyos para sa kanila. So, tagapamagitan. At magdadala sa Kanya ng kanilang mga sularin. Ibig sabihin dito, talagang si Moses yung nagpre-pray para sa mga tao. Panginoon, maawa ka sa kanila. Favor mo sila. Dadaan talaga kay Moses. You warn them as to the statutes and the laws of the Torah and make known to them the way in which they should walk and the work which they should do. Ituturo mo sa kanila ang mga batas at ang mga kautusan at ipaalam mo sa kanila ang daang nararapat nilang lakaran at gawing kanilang nararapat gawin. Sa ibang version, ikaw ang magtuturo sa kanila ng mga kautusan at mga palatuntunan at ikaw rin ang magpapaliwanag sa kanila kung ano ang dapat nilang gawin. More generic. Pero take note, the word walk, there, the work in Hebrew, it doesn't mean just walking like namamasya. Hindi po. Walk symbolizes a lifestyle pleasing to God. So, sige mo? So, if the church would sing, walk, walk, walk in the light, para wala na, no? Hebrew is a very serious meaning. What? Like, Abraham walked with God. Noah walked with God. Enoch Walk with God. All these people are very close and very, obedient to Adonai. So, parang sinasabi ni Jethro, turuan mo sila ng torah, tapos ipaalam mo sa kanila kung paano nila i-apply ang torah. At paano nila gawin yun. Wala nang mas maliwanag pa doon. Hindi lang basta alamin ang torah, kundi i-apply at isabuhay at gawin. So nakita mo? This is Hebraic. Kasi sa Greek, just know them in your mind. Sa Torah, do them with your action. And you shall look of men of ability out of all the people who fear Elohim, men of truth, hating unjust gain, and you place them over us, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, ruler of fifties, and ruler of tens. Bukod dito, pipili ka sa buong bayan ng mga lalaking may kakayanan, gaya ng mga may takot sa Diyos, mga lalaking mapagkakatiwalaan at mga napupuot sa suhol. Ilagay mo ang mga lalaking iyon na mamuno sa kanila, mamuno sa libo-libo, sa daan-daan, sa 50 at sa 10. Napansin niyo po, mga lalaki. So, hindi po sinabing babae. Mga lalaki po talaga ang nasa chain of command sa Torah. Ang ibig sabihin nito, and let them judge the people at all times. It shall be that every great matter they shall bring to you, and every small matter they shall judge. And you shall make it easy on yourself, and let them bear with you. Hayaan mong humatol sila sa bayan sa lahat ng panahon. Bawat malaking usapin ay dadalhin nila sa iyo. Ngunit bawat munting usapin ay sila ang magpapasya. Upang maging mas madali para sa iyo, magpapasaan sila kasama mo. If you do this thing, Elohim command you, you will be able to stand, and also these people will go in peace to their place. And Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law, and he did all that he said. Kapag ginawa mo ang bagay na ito at iyong ang inuutos sa iyo ng Diyos, ikaw ay makakatagal at ang buong bayang ito ay uuwing payapa. Kaya pinakinggan ni Moises ang kanyang biyanan, ang ginawa ang lahat. So, pumili ang sabi sa kanya, i-delegate mo ang iyong authority, Moses. So, most probably, this is by appointment. Kilala ni Moses, siyempre, at this point in time, Moses is already around, at least, the youngest would be 80 years old. But since this is just the beginning of Exodus, he is around between 80 to 90 years old. So, most likely, he has known most of the elders of Israel. Most likely, Moses knows who are the trustworthy people in the congregation. So, most likely, Moses is familiar with every leader in the community. Diba? Just like, alam mo, si Mayor, okay, sa Antipolo tayo. Si Mayor Inares, kilala niya lahat ng kapitan sa Antipolo, di ba? Hello? Si kapitan naman, kilala ni kapitan lahat ng kagawad. Di ba? Pero, ang kausap lang ni Mayor, yung kapitan. Hindi niya nakausapin yung kagawad. Kasi nga, delegation and distribution and democratization of authority. So, It means that among thousands of Israelites, there are 1,000 leaders. One head of 1,000, 10 heads of 100, 20 heads of 50, and 100 head of tens. One in every 8 adult male Israelite was expected to undertake some form of leadership. Nakita niyo paano nila pinatakbo ang 2 milyon na tao? How they were able to govern the system of governance of Torah, which is the kingdom system. So, question. What are the qualifications? Sabi rito, ang qualification, men of God-fearing, yeah. So, okay, men who fear Elohim. So basically, men of integrity. At the very least, morally upright. Okay. Men of truth. May understanding sa Torah. Kasi truth is the whole commandments of the Torah. Hating unjust gain. Hindi corrupt. So, meron question. Dahil distribution and delegation of authority to, meron ho bang botohan niya? Meron ho bang we are going to elect Mr. So-and-so as the leader of our tribe. Is there a voting system? It depends on Moses. It depends on him. Siguro, pag hindi siya familiar sa isang lugar, maaaring, sige, mag-select kayo ng tao, tapos pag-usapan natin who is the best. Pero if he knows the people, he will just appoint. Si kumpare Judah, kilala ko yan, matagal ko nang kilala yan. Yan na yung leader. By appointment. Di ba? Parang ganito, si President Duterte, naging presidente, sino i-appoint niya? Lahat ng trustworthy na tao niya. Alam nga naman mag-appoint siya ng tao na hindi niya trusted. Diba? Ang tawag niya ay cabinet. Diba? So, anong mangyari sa mga cabinet? Ilagay sa drawer. Hindi po. Cabinet member. Sabihin, bit-bit niya palagi yun. So, take note na ganito nila pinatakbo ang Israel. So, the point here, mga kapatid, is out of 1,000 people, there are 131 leaders. So, being trained in the Torah. Okay. Move further, Exodus 19:4-6. You yourself have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Kaya kung ngayon, kung tunay na inyong susundin ang aking tinig at tutuparin ang aking tipan, kayo ay magiging aking sariling pag-aari na higit sa lahat ng bayan sapagkat ang buong daigdig ay sa akin. Sa akin kayo ay magiging isang kaharian ng mga pare at isang banal na bansa. So understanding this, but this is a very striking statement, sabi ni Rabbi Sachs. Every nation has its priest. In the book of Genesis, ano sabi kay Israel? Actually, that was Exodus 19. If you recall together, assemble all the people on the 50th day of Shavuot. Moses assembled all the people together. Ibig sabihin, they have a very mass gathering, no? And doon sinabi ni Yahweh na, Moses, tell them, I will make all of them, not just one, not just you, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Not just Moses. Lahat kayo ay magiging pare at mare. For the lack of a better term. Lahat kayo maging father and walang mother talaga. It's patriarchal system. Walang matriarch. Sinabi, hindi siya, you're going to be a matriarch and a patriarch. Sorry po, women, carry nyo po ang leadership ng husband nyo pag sa Torah. What is, in ancient world, there was nothing distinctive about priesthood. Being Israel called to be a holy priest. In the time of Abraham, Melchizedek was the priest of the high God. In the story of Joseph, it mentioned Egyptian priests whose land was not nationalized. In the time of Jethro, he was a Midianite priest. So every nation has its priests and holy men. What was distinctive about Israel was that it was to become a nation wherein everyone of whose members were to be a priest, each of whose citizen was called to be holy. So, ang calling to be a representative of Yahweh is to all Israel, to all of us. Hindi lang ako, hindi lang selected individual, everyone. Yun po ang principle. The word priest can mean princess or leaders. Or according to Rabbi Rashi and Ramban, it means servant leaders. Kasi a priests are called to serve Yahweh. But since all of them are called to be priests, para sinasabi, all of you are to become servant leaders. From the very high position to the lowest, meron pong papel ang bawat isa. Similarly, the similar concept in Ephesians chapter 5 is, the body has many members. Di ba? Hindi pwede sabihin ng maliit na bagay ng katawan, hindi kita kailangan. Hindi pwede sabihin, yung kuko, hindi ko kailangan. Kailangan mo yan. Diba? Hindi pwede sabihin, oy, buhok sa ilong, hindi kita kailangan, bunutin kita. Buhok sa kilay, binubunot. Yung mga babae. Hindi ko kita kailangan. Papalitan nyo na mas maganda. Pilik mata. Ayan, artistic na mga babae yan. So all Israel are responsible for one another. The Jewish people were the people who did not leave leadership to a single individual, however holy or exalted, or to an elite. Every one of them was expected to become a prince and a servant. So every one of whom was called to be a leader. Sabi nga rito ni Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, never was leadership more profoundly democratized. So, ibig sabihin po, all of them are to be holy, pero, i-define muna natin, paano ba maging holy? Okay, balikan natin yung lesson natin last time. What is holy? Kadosh. What is kadosh? Holy. Binaliktad nyo lang. Set apart. Yeah. Alam mo, in every, in the Siddur, or the traditional prayer book of the Jews, ito po ang prayer nila. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kedishyano b'mitzvotah. Ganito po palagi ang prayer nila. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe. Ganun palagi ang intro, King ng mundo. Who has commanded us to become holy by the commandments. Sabi ni Paul sa Romans 7:12, the Torah is holy, the commandment holy, just and good. Ang kautusan ay banal at ang utos ay banal, ang matuwid at mabuti. So paano po magiging holy ang tao? By obeying the commandments. So obeying the commandments applies to all Israel. Not just Moses, not just the 1,000 leaders, no. From the least to the greatest, to the lowest position to the highest, the commandments applies to all. That's what it means. You are to be a holy people. Kasi po, in the ancient world, mga priests ay set apart, pero sila lang yung holy. I'll give you an example. Lahat ba na, example na lang, for lack of a better illustration, ha? Lahat ng pare, holy yan. Di ba? Pag tumaas ka pa ng posisyon, mas banal na yon, di ba? Pagdating sa Pope, mas higit Diyos na yon. Katumbas, the vicar of God. So, ibig sabihin, holiness is selected to a group of people lang. Kasi, sila lang yung nagre-represent sa Diyos eh. Kaya nga, dadaan ka sa kanila lahat eh. Kasi, ikaw, hindi ka naman pare, hindi ka pwedeng mag-pray. Kami lang may karapatan mag-pray sa mga binyag, sa kasal, sa patay. Kung ordinary ka, hindi ka pwede. Bayad ka sa amin. Para kumita naman kami. May pondo kami para sa aming mga project. This is what makes the Torah unique in a sense that all of Israel are called to be holy. So what is holy? Without holiness, no one will see Yahweh. So holiness is important. Ang kabanalan na kung wala ito ay walang sino man makakakita sa Panginoon. Ug ang pagkabalaan mo, kung wala kiini, walay bisan kinsa makakita sa Ginoo. So, in-explain ko natin, hindi ko na i-repeat masyado. Sinabi dito sa Judges 2:20, because this nation violates my covenant, which I ordered their fathers to obey, and didn't pay attention to what I say. Ibig sabihin, if Israel will not obey the Torah, Yahweh will treat them to be just like any other nation, no longer special. Ibig sabihin, pag ikaw, you claim to be a Torah keeper, pero, or most people who are, claim to believe in God, pero they are not following the Torah, for most part, sabi ni Yahweh, I will just treat you just like everyone else. You're not special, actually. So, because the word nation there means goy or goyim, refers to the Gentile nation. Sabi niya, because this nation breaks my covenant. Okay. Alam mo, recently we have one of the most powerful typhoons that hit our country, Odette. Siargao was devastated. Alam mo, may message ang Panginoon. Ayaw na ng Panginoon ng mga turista. Ayaw niya na. Ayaw niya na yung mag-happy-happy yung mga tao. Bakit? Hindi na po panahon to ng happy-happy. Panahon na to ng mga delikado. Panahon na to ng pandemic, scamdemic, tsaka plandemic. Alam niyo ibig sabihin, ha? May nagplaplano ng demic, tsaka may mga scammer na demic. So, Bohol was devastated, Cebu was severely affected. All of these cities are known to be worshippers of idols. They worship Santo Niño, they worship mga Santo Santita, they worship this, mga God made of woods, made of stone. And the Torah says, the Ten Commandments said, you shall have no other God. If you have other gods, then you are not my people. The message is very strong. And no one was able to complain against God. Everyone is praying. Why? 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 So we understand. It's a message, serious warning. If you will continue in idolatry, I will make your Christmas a blue Christmas, just like today. No one greeted me Merry Christmas. Si Yoshel greeted me Happy New Year. So God says, Lo Ami, you're not my people. Because you're not kadosh. So, you can only become a holy people and a holy nation if you follow a Torah. It makes the difference. Sabi niya, I will make a distinction between my people and the nations. It's very clear. Alam mo, to me, as a Filipino, it really hit me very hard. Because I feel I'm not special. I grew up a very simple provinciano, living in Mindanao, and working in Manila later on. I tried to, succeed in life. But when I read the Torah that says, I can become special by the Torah, who doesn't want to become special? Anong gusto nyo? Special o ordinary? Anong mas masarap na bihon? Special o ordinary? Special siyempre, di ba? Mas kompleto sa rekado. So to me, when I learn about you can be a special person, in fact, the word in Hebrew is treasured possession. Hindi lang special. Treasured. Segula. Can you say segula?
Segula.
Alam mo what segula means? Okay, in the ancient context, segula is a special jewelry worn by the king himself. So the kings are very rich, di ba? They have golds, they have all kinds of golds, di ba? So kung merong 100 pieces of jewelry ang hari, hindi niya masusuot lahat yan. Meron siyang isusuot na gamit na yun ang paborito niya. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng segula ba? Special out of the special. Kadosh. So how does that become to reality? Okay, application. By following the dietary law, nagiging special ka. Very simple, di ba? Alam mo, when we were in the islands, we were offered crabs, shrimps. But we chose ginamos. Ginamos na lang. Kunwari na lang, paborito namin yan. Yan, di namin paborito yan. Crabs, ginamos na lang. So, and we have experienced that every day, di ba? If you go to sari-sari store, it's very hard to live in a Torahless society, di ba? It's very hard to eat. In fact, if you're going to follow strict dietary law, hindi ka pwedeng kumain sa sari-sari store. Because all of those food were cooked in utensils that cook pork and alam mo, when you read at the label ng mga condiments, nakasabi doon, this product was manufactured in a facility that also manufactures shrimps, crabs, and sinasabi nila, ibig sabihin, I bought a Ribisco biscuit, parang Skyflex version. Nakita ni Florence, nakalagay, shrimp! Huwag mo yung kainin yan. Ako naman nataranta ko, shrimp na. Binasa ko, sinabi ron, wala naman palang shrimp. Ang sinasabi lang doon, niluto siya sa isang pasilidad kung saan pinoprocess din yung mga shrimp. Parang sa noodles, di ba? Sa noodles, nakalagay, this product was manufactured in a facility that... So kung sundin mo talaga ang kosher law, wala na yun, hindi mo na pwedeng kainin yun. If you follow kosher, strict kosher, even McDonald's, you cannot eat hamburger. Because they also cook ham during breakfast. Afternoon, they will cook burger. In the same facility, they cook ham in the morning. But what can I do? You will starve to death? That's why we need entrepreneurs that offers kosher food. So, ang magaling dyan, mga Adventists. Adventists, they manufacture their own food. They have tofu, they have vegetable meat, di ba? Advertisement, if you want to order, just contact us. Meron nagde-deliver dito na Adventist, gusto nyo? Meron dito nagde-deliver. Kung gusto nyo mga kosher talaga. Kasi, kung talagang strict kosher ka, kaya po, ito magagawa natin sa Goshen to. Yung kosher talaga puro. Alam mo, when I came to Torah 16 years ago in 2005, this is the first lesson that I taught Florence, Dietary law. Florence was suffering from severe, namamaga? Inflammation of the limbs. Tuhod dito. Bakit? My mother, who is her mother-in-law from Zamboanga, would send kilos of crabs cooked in bagoong gata. Napakasarap. Kilo-kilo ba? Sambuang kasi 100 lang ang kilo nun eh. Napakamura lang yan dun eh. Luluto ng nanay ko by request sa aking mahal na ito Flores, kainin mo. Ay nanay ko Katoliko. Si Flores, edad ni Flores doon, bata pa. Diba? Flores was just like 36 years old. Ang sakit, di ako makapaglaba, ganito. Nung na-discover akong Torah, binasa ko sa kanya, huwag mong kainin yung mga gumagapa. Alam mo, isang Bible study lang. Sumunod siya agad. Di na ako nahirapan. Gumaling siya. Naturally, gumaling by just following the dietary law. So many of these diseases can be avoided just by following the dietary law. So, this is the calling to become a holy people and a holy nation, not just one in person, not just the Levites, not just the tribe of Judah, all the 12 tribes of Israel. So, maliwanag. So, what is holiness? Okay, New Testament principle. In what way an unbeliever and a believer is holy? Okay, you are holy because you have Yeshua in your life. Because not everyone has Yeshua, di ba? So, going back to New Testament doctrine, sabi ng mga evangelical, you are holy not because of who you are, but because of Jesus. True. Because before, you do not have Jesus. Now you have Jesus, you have the Ruach HaKodesh, you become holy. So first and foremost, you become holy if you have the Holy Spirit in you, if you have Yeshua in you. So that's very clear. But after you have Yeshua, what would you do to maintain the holiness? What happened is, without the Torah, Christians would eat pork, would eat shrimp, would violate commandments in the Torah, and they do not know what's happening. So, ang tawag niyan is, hindi na holiness. Abomination. They become unclean. Nilinis na sa dugo ni Kristo, pero yung templo madumi. Kaya merong kapatiran noon, umiiyak. Kasi, sabi nung isang kapatid, punong-puno siya ng problema na sobrang bigat. This sister says, I have so many troubles, so many problems. I fasted and fasted. There's no answer to my problems. Sabi ko, what are you doing? Sabi niya, after fasting, I would eat the pork soup. That's what I do always. I just eat the pork soup after fasting and praying. Just imagine, it's senseless, no, na to see na ganun po ang sitwasyon natin sa mga Christian brother natin. Sabi ni Rabbi Jonathan Sark, this is probably why most out of the many people in the world, extraordinarily high percentage of leaders in any field of human endeavor are the Jewish people. Ibig sabihin, the Jewish people are leaders. They are leaders in many fields. Di ba? Banking system, technology, agriculture, lahat po ng mga industriya, nag-excel sila. They are leaders of their own field. So they are natural leaders. So, they are called to lead. But more particularly, mga kapatid, spiritually, they are to be representative of Yahweh. No? But today, how many percentage lang ng Jewish people are believer in Yeshua the Messiah? So, 1%. Pero yung 1% na believers in the Messiah, ilan ang nadala nila ang Torah sa Gentiles? Alam mo yung Messianic Torah movement, saan ba nanggagaling ito? Pakiilaw nga sa likod. Pakiilaw nga dyan, bro, sa likod. Si madilim na. Tsaka dito. Madilim na eh. Yeah. De, ito, tama na to. Wag to, tama lang isa to. Tama lang to isa. Dito. Yeah. So tingnan mo alam mo, in United States of America, where the Messianic movement, grew, it started by the Jewish people. Then mga Gentiles are being attracted to the movement, and eventually, there are more Gentiles than Jewish people. My first teachers in this movement were all Jewish. Name ko Tim Hegg. I started with Tim Hegg in 2005. Tim Hegg is a Baptist who is a Jew, who is one of the primary Torah teachers in America today. He has a Bible school in Wisconsin, Washington. A lot other teachers like Torah class, Thomas Bradford. Most of my teachers were all Jewish. Okay, not to mention pala, ewan ko kung nandiyan na yung diploma ko. I already passed the 2-year course of Master in Jewish Studies in Israel Bible Center. So, after 2 years. Because I found out that they are the best teachers of the Bible. The Hebrew teachers are the best teachers. This is appreciating the Hebrew roots of our faith. I don't have to look to, Aristotle and Plato and sino yung mga first century Greek theologians. I don't know. I don't have to look. I can compare their teachings, but my primary teachers were Jewish people because they were the first-hand witness of the Bible. Okay. So, what's our topic? Governance, the leadership style of Moses, and the management of the kingdom. Okay. Baka sabihin nyo, self-serving ito message, no? Hindi po. Galing po ito. Kaya nandyan yung litrato niya Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Great Britain Chief Rabbi. Galing po sa kanya yan. Sabi niya, true leaders are teachers of the law. Okay, let's see what he has to say. Sabi niya, the leader, sabi niya, in the book of Devarim, which is the last book of the Torah, fifth book of the Torah, Pag binasa mo na yung book of Deuteronomy, 40 years na nangyari yung wilderness. They're almost at the brink of entering the promised land. So Moses was known to be a miracle worker. He was a redeemer, he was a statesman, he was a judge, he was a prophet, he was a priest. But sabi niya, in the last part of Moses' life, he became Moshe Rabbeinu. What's Moshe Rabbeinu? This is a common term in the Jewish circle that Moses our teacher. Can you say Moses Rabbeinu?
Moses Rabbeinu.
The leader, Moses, is actually the great teacher. So, Moses surely knew that some of his greatest achievements would not last forever. Sabi niya. So he planted a vision in the minds, hope in their hearts, a discipline in their deeds, and a strength in their souls that would never fade. When leaders become educators, they change lives. 120 years old na si Moses. In the day of Sukkot, sabi niya, gather all the people. Anong ginawa ni Moses? He taught them the entire Torah. Alam mo kung sa loob ng 7 araw, tinuro niya ang buong Torah at sinabi niya, and Moses says, on this day, sabi niya, let all the souls that are in know that all these commandments applies to you and to your children, and those that were not even born yet. What was known to be the climax of Moses' life, a lifetime achievement award after all the miracles performed, all the deeds, all the greatness of Moses, he started to give another 72 law. 72 new law. After 40 years, Moses is still educating them. These are the laws. I'm good. This is it. So therefore, sabi ni Rabbi Sachs, sabi niyo, true leaders are educators of the Torah. So let's compare other leaders like politicians, which is better. Okay, let's compare Yeshua the Messiah. This is my insert. No? Yeshua the Messiah was a prophet like Moses, who is a teacher of the Torah. Matthew 5:17. I have come not to abolish the Torah, but to fulfill the Torah. Hindi ako naparito upang iwalang bisa ang Torah, kundi dumating ako para isakatuparan ng Torah. John 5:46. If you do not know what Moses had written, how can you understand my words? So sinasabi ni Yeshua, kung hindi nyo alam ang Torah ni Moses, paano nyo maintindihan yung sinasabi ko? What is the difference between a rabbi and a pastor is the pastor teaches New Testament doctrines, while Messianic rabbi teaches the New Testament from its foundations in the Torah, Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, the 5 books of Moses. What are the similarities? If Moses was the Rabbeinu, the great teachers of Israel, in what way Yeshua is greater than Moses? In what way Yeshua is greater than Moses, besides being a God, Son of God? Yeshua cannot be greater than Moses if he is not a Torah teacher. He cannot be. See, Brother Ed, first time he came here, he asked me, Brother Ed, where was Jesus when he was 12 years old? That was the question of Ed. Sabi ko, very simple. He was in the synagogue studying the Torah at the age of 12, he was already debating in the temple with the rabbi. Just imagine how much Torah knowledge he has. I wish my son is like that. Diba? So, alam mo, archaeologically speaks for truth. They dig several ancient first century synagogue in Nazareth, where Yeshua grew up. In several places in Israel, they discovered a lot of synagogue made of stones. And most part of the synagogue that they dug they saw a yeshiva beside it. Ibig sabihin, a school of Torah is always attached to the synagogue. Ibig sabihin, nag-exist na talaga ang Torah education since the first century. And for the lack of scrolls, for most part, the Torah knowledge was transmitted verbally by repetition. They call this the oral Torah. Ibig sabihin, by memorization. So Rabbi Shaul, being a rabbi of the El Sanhedrin, memorized the Torah. Why is Yeshua called the living Torah? Because he breathes, speaks, and live out the Torah. All that comes from his mouth is the Torah. Moses, being the educator of the Torah, is the greatest teacher in Israel. And here comes Yeshua, who claims to be the Son of God. He can be no less than a Torah teacher himself, mga kapatid. And these Christians do not know. They just look Jesus as a Redeemer, Savior. Buti pa ang Muslim, alam nila kung sino si Muhammad, the teacher of Islam. Diba? Kaya, kung tingnan mo ang portrayal ni Jesus ngayon, he is a Greek. He is a Greek identity. Na nakapako sa cross, nakabahag. Diba? A very poor illustration of his true identity. Okay, so insert ko lang yan. Sabi ni Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, sabi niya, quoting from a powerful essay, sabi niya, who fits the lead to lead the Jewish people? Kings, teachers, as leadership type. Okay. In Deuteronomy 17, the Torah places severe limits on the power of kings. They must not multiply gold, wives, and horses. A king is commanded not to consider himself better than his fellow Israelites, nor turn from the law to the right or to the left. A king was only to be appointed at the request of the people. According to Ramban Ezra, the appointment of a king was permitted but not an obligation. According to Rabbi Abarbanel, ito yung mga kilalang mga rabbi, it was a concession to human frailty. Ravenu Bakya regarded existence of a king as a punishment, not a reward. In short, Judaism at best considered monarchy to be above leadership as power. Okay. In his commentary, Rabbeinu Bakya found that the people should in principle have needed no other king than God himself. Hosea chapter 13 verse 11. They set up kings without my consent. They choose princes without my approval. And my anger I gave you a king, and my wrath I took him away. So, Jonathan Rabbi Sachs is actually saying, who is a better leader? A king who is above everyone else, untouchable, executive, ano yun? Hindi pwede siyang kasuhan. Basta king above everyone else, power lahat. Everyone is never can be higher than the king authority.
Immunity.
Diplomatic immunity, everything. So, sabi niya, when someone exercises power over us, they diminish us. But when someone teaches us, they help us grow. That is why in Judaism, with its acute concern for human dignity, favors leadership as education over leadership as power. And it began with Moses at the end of his life, the educator of Torah, the leader. So, In the time of Prophet Samuel, the Israelite wanted a human king. Kasi po, by strict concern of the Torah, the king is no less than Yahweh himself. Walang dapat human king. Si Yahweh lang talaga ang hari. That's why He's the king of the universe. Pero since in the time of Shaul, sabi niya, let us have our king just like the other nations. And God said, okay, you can have that. But sabi nga ni Hosea, you can appoint a king, but I can take him away. So, that's why you have 1 Kings and 2 Kings. The history of the kings of Israel. They started practically good with the time of Joshua and the judges. 1 King, 2 King, tapos nagdi-deteriorate na hanggat sa nawala na. Because ultimately, being human is actually, human frailty, yung kahinaan ng tao. Hindi yun ang sistema talagang magtatagal. Si Yahweh lang talaga yung king. Pero, if you look at the New Testament, it says, I have made you a kingdom of prince and kings. So, mayroon naman pala prince, may king. Bakit? Na-master na nila yung Torah. So, I think, in my opinion, a fortunate person who is qualified to be a king is a master educator of the Torah. So it's a long, long way for all of us. We're just starting. You cannot be king out of nothing. Uupo ka sa posisyon ng hari, hindi ka pwede maging king kung hindi mo alam ang batas ng kaharian. Many Christians think that they will be a king in the kingdom. Ay, maging prinsipe tayo, si bishop, maging prinsipe sa kaharian ng Diyos. Hindi po. Ang pagkaintindi ko, ito yung sinabi ni Panginoong Yeshua. Those who follow the commandments and teaches the commandments to others, they will become great in my kingdom. Those who do not will become the least. The first will be the last will be the first. Paradox. So, we're talking about leadership, no? So, who is the best example of a leader? Moshe Rabbeinu. We're studying the life of Moshe Rabbeinu. So what? Ito, insert ko to. What is the difference between a politician and a teacher? A politician who is not a Torah keeper, example, who is not religious, who is not Bible believer, where do you think he will get wisdom to lead the people? Human wisdom. And as far as human wisdom himself, where are the biggest empire of the world? Where are the Egyptian empire? Where are the Babylonian empire, the Persian empire, the Greek empire, the Spanish empire? Where are they? Alam mo, what's common about all this empire? They all persecute Israel. All of the empire who persecuted Israel no longer exists today. Israel is growing stronger and stronger and stronger. Palapakan natin si Yahweh. To see the mystery of the Torah, mga kapatid. So now, there's a division among the Filipino people because there is election time and we are choosing who will be electing your right to vote, di ba? So we have a few select. You have Manny Pacquiao, who is a Bible believer but not yet a Torah keeper. You have Bongbong Marcos, who is the son of the late dictator Marcos, who is an Ilocano. So all Ilocano will vote Bongbong Marcos for sure, including my wife. He's trying to convince me to vote Bongbong. All the Makatila will vote Lenny Robredo without thinking. Sino ba isa? Lacson and Soto. Yung komedyante tsaka yung pulis. Sino iboto mo dyan? Alam mo ko, ako mag-abstain na lang ako. By default, by being a believer, I will just vote a believer. That's the least I can do. Sino bang believer dyan? Yung na lang ang pinaka-least qualified. Diba? So, kasi, the qualification of a true leader, according to this principle, is a teacher of the law, a teacher of the Torah. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu. Diba? Okay. Mamaya makita natin, how did Moses lead the people? Is it by consensus or by the command? Is he democratic? Or he just tell, this is what it to do? Mamaya we will going to go there. Sabi rito, no wonder mga kapatid, in every Jewish community around the world, there are Torah school. There are Torah school. You go to New York, lahat po yan may Torah school. Every part of America, there is a Torah school. The best Torah school in the world are all in Jerusalem. Okay? If you have been to Jerusalem twice, there are thousands of students around the world who just study Torah in Israel. They study Torah. That's the culture of the Jewish people. But in the Christian, they go to Sunday school. That is better than nothing, no? So, the leader, take note properly mga kapatid, because we're going to learn a lot here. The leader as teacher using influence, not power, spiritual and intellectual authority rather than force. Moses, for the last month of his life, summoned the next generation and taught them laws and lessons that would survive and inspire as long as there are human beings on earth. So, I can see something here mga kapatid about the future. If the islands are waiting for the Torah, if King David and the Messiah will rule and reign in the millennial kingdom, guess what? What will they teach the nations? They will teach the nations. So who will they delegate to help them teach the nations? The Torah keepers. So we are seeing this. This is a futuristic event, mga kapatid. That's why we're serious about studying Torah now. Because, ibig sabihin, walang masasayang dito. Actually, ngayon pa lang may matutunan ka na eh. In fact, I have a very good friend who is an evangelist, no? And a pastor. Sabi niya, he and his wife is debating over 2 political candidates. Sabi niya, he is being recruited to campaign for Manny Pacquiao, who is a born-again believer and a sort of a pastor. And his wife is very strong with Lenny Robredo.
Wow.
Sabi niya, siyempre, very influential yung wife niya in the Filipino culture, di ba? Very influential of the wife. In fact, you can see that, alam mo, gusto malaman sino mas ma-influensya sa bahay? Pag nag-away yung mag-asawa, tingnan mo lahat ng bata, pupunta sa mami. Mami! Sa nanay pupunta yan. Bakit kaya? Doon siya dumidede eh. Hindi po. Kaya, siguro, nakita nila yung figure nung paano nag-provide yung mama, nagpapakain, no? So, sabi ko, ganun ba? Sabi ko, I think I'm trying to, what do you think? Sabi ko sa kanya, I'm trying to, I've never done this before. Sabi ko, I think I try to make a Facebook page that says, what are the biblical roles of men and women, and what is leadership biblically? Pwede ba talaga maging presidente ang isang babae ng isang bansa? alam naman natin, by strict rules, hindi pwede. Bakit ipipilit? So, politics po yan. So, encourage me, gagawin ko yan kung kailangan because naintindihan ko eh. Okay. So, ito. Meron pa tayo, 20 minutes. Consensus versus command. Paano ba nag-lead si Moses? Para siya bayelek. Okay. At the end of Moses' life, he will commission Joshua. What do you say to your successor? What advice do you give them? Moses finally hands the reins over to Joshua, and he and God himself give him a blessing for the future. So, both God and Moses was giving advice here what to do. No? They give different blessing. Moses says, be strong and of good courage. Deuteronomy 31 verse 7. For you will come with these people into the land. Come means tavo. God says in Deuteronomy 31:23, be strong of good courage, for you will bring the Israelite into the land. Okay. One word makes the difference. One is, you will come with these people, tabo. Moses said to Joshua, together you will enter the promised land. You will come with these people, tabo. God says, you will bring them to the land. And a rabbi noticed the different meanings of this, mga kapatid. Here is how Rabbi Rashi, a very popular rabbi, interprets the passage. Moses says to Joshua, make sure that the elders of their generations are with you. Always act according to their opinion and advice. Consensus. However, for the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Joshua, for you will bring the Israelite into the land I promised them, meaning, bring them even against their will. It all depends on you. If necessary, take a stick and beat them over the head. There is only one leader for a generation, not two. This is the opinion of Rabbi Rashi. The two extreme of leadership, consensus or command. Moses advised Joshua to pursue a policy of consultation and conciliation. What he was saying in effect was, you don't need to follow the people, you are a leader, not they, but they do need to work with the elders. They too are leaders, they constitute in effect your team. They need to feel that they are part of the decision-making process. They will not expect you always to agree with them. Often they will not agree with one another, but they do not need to feel consulted. Okay. Sabi niya rito, if they sense that you are not interested in their opinions, if the impression they have of you is the person determined to do the things in his way regardless of everyone else because you know better, they will attempt to sabotage you. Ibig sabihin, kung the possibility of the consensus style of leadership, sabi niya, they will sabotage you. They will do you harm. They may not succeed. You may survive, but you will be injured. You will be limp. Your standing among the people will be diminished. They will say, how can we respect one who is not respected by the elders? Sabi ni Rabbi Isaac, I speak from experience. The Korach rebellion was serious. It was not just Korach. It was the Reubenites and other leaders of the various tribes. So make sure that the elders of the congregations are with you. If they are, you will succeed. Ibig sabihin, ang wisdom dito is leadership by consensus. Not everyone will agree with Moses. Not everyone will agree with his policy. And if that happens, there will be a diminishing effect on their unity, which, sabi nga dito, You will be injured. Ibig sabihin, you will be diminished. The respect will be diminished. Pero, on the other hand, if you can handle them well, if all the 12 tribes of the generation will be, led to an agreement in unity, therefore they will succeed. Okay, so take note, this is academic mga kapatid. I'm not making this up. Tingnan po ha. Sinabi ni Moses kay Joshua, listen to the advice of the people. That's consensus. So Moses is talking here. Sabi niya, Joshua, trinain na kita ng ilang taon, 40 years. Makinig ka sa mga payo ng mga elders of the 12 tribes. Because sama-sama kayo together, sana all, to the promised land. Sabi naman ng Diyos, Joshua, be strong and of good courage. You will bring them. Ang sabi ni Moses, sama-sama kayo sa promised land, sinabi kay Joshua, hindi, dadalhin mo sila doon. Magkaiba yun mga kapatid. Yung isa, command. Yung isa, consensus. Kaya ang topic nito, sabi ni Rabbi Jonathan Sack, consensus, leadership, or command? Let's learn. So good. Maganda ba ang topic natin? Perfect for our situation today. Sabi ko, ang galing ng Panginoon. This is the perfect wisdom that I need really sa panahon natin ngayon. Okay. Sabi ito. Okay. Next. So God, Yahweh, according to the sages, took the opposite approach. So, this is what the Rabbi Rashi is saying. Sabi niya, don't look for consensus. You will never find it. People's interests are different. Their perspectives are not the same. Politics are in conflict. Since I have given humanity the gift of freedom, I cannot take it back and impose my will by force. Then you must show the people the way. So ibang wisdom dito mga kapatid. Parang sinasabi daw ng Diyos, according to these mga great rabbis na nagpapaliwanag dito, why did God say, just bring them. Just lead them to the promised land. Ibig sabihin, by all means, just be a leader. By all your power and your wisdom that God gave you, just be a leader, just bring them. So, sabi rito, Yahweh said to Joshua, as interpreted by the sages, lead from the front, be clear, be consistent, be strong. The last person who gave the people what they wanted was Aaron, and what they wanted was the golden calf. That was nearly the end of the Jewish people. Consensus in politics or business or even in pursuit of truth is not leadership, but the abdication of leadership. I chose you to be Moses' successor, God talking to Joshua, because I believe in you. Therefore, believe in yourself. Tell the people what they must do and tell them why. Let's have an example. Ito, insertion ko tong part dito mga kapatid. Congress consenting everything law. If you're going by the leadership style of consensus, like the Congress, how many people voted against the LGBTQ law? The same-sex marriage? None! Because everybody is pleasing other people. Let them get what they want, including President Duterte announces in Davao. This is not National. This video recorded. President Duterte said in Davao, during the gay parade, if you want that law, I will give it to you. Then tomorrow, there is earthquake in Davao. So many people died. There was flood in Davao. Si Greco Bellica and I had a privilege of talking to Greco a few days after that event, and nag-whisper ako kay Greco ba. Buhay pa yung mama niya, palagi kami bumibisita sa bahay nila tuwing linggo. Sabi ko, Greco, alam mo, bakit may sakuna ang Davao palagi? In-announce ni Presidente na he will support the LGBT community. That means including same-sex marriage. Alam mo, si Greco was not yet appointed as chairman of the PACC Anti-Corruption Council during that time. He has no position in government. But he has an access to the cabinet members. His father was not yet appointed as the OPARA director during that time. Alam mo, he confronted Duterte. Sabi niya, Sir, God will become angry with you if you do that. Sinabi niya kay Duterte. He has the balls to say that to Duterte. Alam mo, sabi ni Duterte, gusto kita. Hindi ka takot magsalita sa akin. Few weeks later, he was appointed chairman of the PACC for telling the truth to the president. Because he's a righteous person, si Duterte, si Greco Velita. So, okay, how many laws are being enacted by consensus? Okay, I discussed this last time. The party list, Gabriela, a woman's advocacy right, no? They pass a law that a woman, a married woman, can opt not to use the husband's surname if she doesn't want the surname of the husband. That law is already approved. And that law is not biblical because the head of the woman is the man. Now the woman is saying, I don't want your surname attached to me. I'm an independent person. I can be your wife, but I don't want your name to be attached to me. I'm same Mrs. my name nung pagkadalaga. What does that imply, mga kapatid? That law already was approved. I discussed that last time, di ba? By consensus, no one objected. Not even the Christian congressmen like Reverend Villanueva and Reverend Abante, who are known to be leaders of the minority group. These people are pastors. How come they did not oppose the law? Because it's leadership by consensus. Ibig sabihin, nakikisakay, nakikisama. Okay, para walang magalit yan. Baka pati asawa ko magalit sa akin. Approve ko yan. What? Alam mo, my understanding of the Torah, if a woman does not want to carry the name of her husband, she is just a concubine. A concubine has no marriage contract. Just like Hagar, just like Keturah. Yan ang status ng mga concubine. There is no actual marriage commitment. So actually, that law is saying, I'm not really married to you by all means. We are just married by convenience. So sooner or later, the marriage will be. So that's a nonsense law. Okay, that's just one. Okay, do you have other examples that you can take? Same-sex marriage. Okay, another law. Actually, these laws are not new. They are introduced from the United Nations, coming from the West. Okay, there's a new law that was approved. You notice something? Even sa mga Filipino application form, the identity of a male, female, or tatlo na ngayon? Male, female, or others, or hindi ko na sabihin ano. Sabihin ko na lang later pag nalaman ko na. Undecided pa. So actually, bakit ginawa? Bakit may mga applications sa government papers, gano'n? Because there is a law already approved about the gender equality. Diba? So, much to that, that's another thing. I will discuss that sooner or later, no? Yung tinatawag na gender equality law. What's wrong with that? Okay. So, basically, what I'm trying to insert here is leadership by consensus or by command. So, the great rabbi would explain that, ito yung sabi ng mga rabbi, no? Yung sinabi ng Diyos, Joshua, just lead. Okay? Ito daw ang essence doon. Be respectful to them. By all means, listen to them. But the end of the day, the responsibility is yours. Leaders lead. They do not follow. And believe me, though they may criticize you now, they will eventually admire you. People want their leaders to know the way and go the way and show the way. They want them to be decisive. Always treat people with the utmost courtesy and respect. But if they do not behave toward you as you do toward them, if they oppose and try to frustrate what you're doing, there will be no choice but to take a stick and hit him on the head. There is only one leader in every generation. If everyone is empowered, there is no music, only noise. No achievement. Only an endless committee meetings at which everyone speaks and no one listens. Ibig sabihin, leadership by democracy, by consensus, mga kapatid, is dangerous at some point. And we have seen this happen historically, in many generations before us, or for the last 100 years, mga kapatid. And, guess what? Sino yung komentary ito kay Joshua? Who was able to lead the Israelites to the promised land? Joshua. Who is Joshua, mga kapatid? Commander-in-chief. Successor ni Moses. Meditate on the Torah day and night. Be careful to do everything. Then you will prosper and succeed. That's the famous Joshua 1:8 that every Christian would quote without understanding it. Parang sinasabi doon, as long na yung ginagawa mo na sa Torah, you will not go wrong, Joshua. Just lead, lead, lead. Bring them. It doesn't matter if they will not agree, just bring them. But at the same time, listen to them, respect them. Ang galing nitong komentary. But sabi nito, interestingly mga kapatid, Moses is actually saying, listen to the advice of the people. Joshua. Who? The person, sabi rito ng komentaryo, historically, in the last 40 years, sabihin, 120 years old na si Moses, ang advice niya kay Joshua, listen to the people, listen for their advice. In fact, pag tinanong mo yung history ni Moses, he never acted by consensus. This is the man who almost had to drag the people out of Egypt by force, led them to the splitting of the sea, Red Sea, across a howling desert wilderness. The man who did things of his own initiative without even asking God permission. This is the man who broke the tablets of stone that was written by God himself. When did Moses ever led by consensus? At sabi, question dito, what suddenly turned Moses into a peacemaker, a leader by consensus man? So this is a paradox, mga kapatid. Ang conclusion dito, mga kapatid, the answer, sabi ni Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, is both God and Moses wanted Joshua to know that true leadership cannot be one-sided affair, but it is the pursuit of consensus or command and control. It must be a depth balance of both. They wanted Joshua to hear this is in the most striking way, so each said what they were least expected to say. Moses, whom everyone associated with strong, decisive leadership, in effect told Joshua, don't forget to strive for consensus. Your task is not what mine was. I had to take the people out of slavery, you have to lead them into the promised land. So, kaya mga kapatid, kung hindi ka mag-aral ito sa mga rawi, hindi mo maintindihan ito eh. Honestly. Kaya blessing ito mga rabay na to. Parang sinasabi ni Moses pala, Moses, Joshua, hindi naman ikaw ako. Bagong henerasyon ka. Kung ako sa'yo, makinig ka sa payo ng mga matatanda na consensusly, makinig ka sa kanila. On the other, God is saying, no, just bring them. So, sabi ni Rabbi Jonathan Sack, therefore, Joshua, sabi ni Moses, Joshua, I am not God, you are not. I have to respect people's freedom. I have to let them go away. They are determined to go, even if it is wrong and self-destructive. But you are a human among humans, and it is your task to show them the way that leads to justice, compassion, and a good society. And the people do not agree with you, you have to teach them, persuade them. But ultimately, you have to lead them, because if everyone does what is right in their own eyes, that is not freedom, but chaos. You have parang, in short, ito yung conclusion mga kapatid, leadership is not simple. It is complex because it involves people, and people are complex. You have to listen, but you have to lead. You have to strive for consensus, but ultimately, if there is none, you must take the risk of deciding. It is not the job of leaders to give people what they want. It is the job of leaders to teach people what they ought to want. But at the same time, they must involve people in the decision-making process. Key figures and constituencies must feel they were consulted. Collaborative, consultative, listening leadership is essential to a free society. So therefore, mga kapatid, considering the effort, energy, stress, the pain of anyone who would seek to be a leader, sabi niya, happy are you if you are to merit leading the children of Israel. So, the greatest gift that ever God gave to mankind is freedom. But the concept here, mga kapatid, is entering the promised land. What does entering the promised land represents prophetically? Entering the millennial kingdom. Entering the millennial kingdom. And we are about to enter the millennial kingdom in the next 14 years. After 14 years, more or less. So correct me if I'm wrong, if you have other ideas, or you just want to be raptured, you don't want to have the problem anymore of that. So, this is the challenge that we are facing, mga kapatid. So, from the wisdom of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, galing! Napakagaling ng mga rabbi na ito, mga kapatid. Such a blessing. Okay, one last thing. I have 10 minutes, maximum 10 minutes. This is very important. Okay, submission to the government. We're talking about leadership, governance. Okay. Submit yourself to all human authority for the sake of the Almighty, whether to be a king because of their supreme power, and to judges because by them officers are sent for the punishment of the offender. For this is the will of Yahweh. O sabi rito mga kapatid, sino nagsabi rito? Si Pedro, ang isang Jewish disciple. Pasakop kayo sa bawat pamahalaan ng tao, alang-alang sa Panginoon. Maging sa hari na kataas-taasan, o sa mga gobernador na sinugo niya upang parusahan ang mga gumagawa ng masama at pangaralan ng mga gumagawa ng mabuti. Sa other translations, alang-alang sa Panginoon, pasakop kayo sa lahat ng kapangyarihan sa bayan, sa emperador, ang pinakamataas na pangyarihan. Sa Pilipinas, iba yung emperador eh. Emperador lights. So, mga kapatid, alam mo, maraming Christian ang nas-deceive dito. No choice sila. Somebody told me that one of the lovers of Israel bishop just said, say, we need to submit to the government. Everything that the government said, just submit to them because sabi ni Peter, sabi ni Paul, submit to that authority because there is no authority given except those that were ordained by God, Yahweh. The one resisting the civil authority has opposed the ordinance of Yahweh. So, ibig sabihin, kung may gagawing batas ang gobyerno natin, submit ka lang submit. Katulad doon, yung ginawa ng Gabriela, gawin ng same-sex marriage. Yun ang tanong. For a ruler is a servant of Yahweh. Alam mo mga kapatid, the general principle here is that the existing, di ba kanina, the highest authority is divine authority. All human authority are delegated authority. Okay, I will give you a different explanation. This is coming from a book by Mark Nanos, a Jewish commentary on the book of Galatians and Romans. He was actually explaining that the authority that exists in the time of the first century, in the time of Peter and Paul, there are two governments that are being mentioned. One is the Roman government and one is the Jewish government. Which authority does Paul recognize? The Jewish government? He is a citizen of Israel? Or when in Rome, he do what the Romans do, he is a Roman authority. He is a dual citizen. So, by generally speaking, there are two governments in the first century. And Paul and Peter, being Jewish, represents both. So what will you do if there's a conflict between the Roman government and the Jewish government? Who is the higher authority? The Jewish or the Roman government? You have now the answer. Because Christians thought there is only one government. Only Rome, only the Greek Empire. Klaro na. Clarex, clear as crystal, di ba? There are two governments. If there's an in conflict with the Torah and the law of the land, I will submit to the Torah. Because that's my divine authority over my life, the highest authority. Diba? So, yan ang application dyan. Yes, in a sense, sabi rito, the one resisting civil authority has opposed the ordinance of Yahweh. Yes. Pero, not in all cases. In fact, right after the verses here, Paul was talking about paying taxes to the government of Rome. Diba? So, in our case, magbabayad naman tayo ng tax, diba? Every time you buy gasolina, you're paying tax. Every time you eat Jollibee, you pay tax. Every time you pay the toll fee, you're paying tax. You're taxpayers, actually. Diba? Ano ba? Every time you board a bus, airplane, restaurant, we follow naman yan eh. What if the principles are in conflict now with the principle of the Torah? Yun. Sa Bisaya, ang tanan kalag pasakop ninyo sa labawang kabgahamana. So, alam mo, there's never a time in the history in the world that freedom is being restricted. Did you know that in Israel, the Orthodox community sued the government of Israel for not allowing them to assemble on Shabbat? Because in the rule of the Orthodox, at least 10 men can form a minyan. A congregation of 10 men is enough to gather every Shabbat. Sabi niya, We are requesting the government of Israel to let us assemble at least 10 lang kami. Dinimanda nila ang gobyerno. I don't know what happened to the case. Ibig sabihin, this is no longer freedom, this is already oppression, mga kapatid. Lockdown, di ka padadaan. Di ka padadaanan. Checkpoint, wala kang vaccine card, di ka padadaanan. So, we have to do our rights under the Philippine Constitution. No? Sabi niyan, grave coercion. Ano yung grave coercion? Hindi ka napwersahan laban sa iyong karapatan. So, yan po ang batas natin. May freedom tayo to roam around the Philippines. So, when we go to the islands, hinanapan kami ng ang question, fully vaccinated ka ba? Sabi ko, hindi. Pero, meron akong medical certificate. Okay na yan. Kaya ano lang talaga yun, intimidation lang talaga kasi may agenda eh. So, comply ako. Okay. So, actually, mamaya, I-discuss ko yung next plan, no? Yung sa, I-finish ko lang to bago to i-stop yung recording. Ito, kawawa kayo. Mga baliktad ang isip. Ang mabuting gawa ay minamasama, ang masama naman ay minamabuti. Ang kaliwanagay ay naaring dilim at ang kadiliman liwanag ang turing. Mapait ang abdo, ang sabi matamis, at ang matamis ay minapapait. Papaitan ito. Ang ibig sabihin, mga kapatid, woe to you, say evil, good, good, evil. History repeats itself. Ang mabuti, ang torah, tinatawag nilang masama. Ang masama, tinawag nilang hindi na alam. Alam mo, full-blown na ang forbidden fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay. Question is, whose authority? Yahweh's divine authority or human authority? Okay. Did you know that 80% of the congregation in Rome and in Galatians and 1 Peter are 80% Roman citizen and 20% Jewish Messianic Torah believers? Hindi natin napapansin yan. Ang sabi ng mga scholar, 80% ng congregation in the New Testament epistles are Roman citizen, 20% are Jewish people in exile from Israel. Scattered tribes. So that means, if that is the case, then, itong mga Messianic Torah believers, they will oppose, if they have to, the imposition of the authority of the Roman government if it intimidates them. Pero, because the Romans are powerful, syempre, the government is powerful. So, at the very least, mga kapatid, at least meron tayong conviction na we have a higher authority. We submit to the Torah. Okay. Meron pa sana ito. Ito next topic na to. Madali lang to. 5 minutes na po na to. Not obeying immoral leaders. How are we supposed to decide whether a law is immoral and should be obeyed? The story of the two remarkable midwives, Sipra and Puah. The Pharaoh instructed them, if you see that baby is a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. Sabi niya, when you are helping the Hebrew woman during the childbirth on the delivery stool, if it's a boy, kill them. Just like King Herod, who killed all the boys during his time because he feared Yeshua will be born. Moses is the little Messiah. So, however, Exodus 1:17 says, the midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do, and they let the boys live. Sabi nito, it is the first time in the civil, in the first time that civil disobedience, recorded of civil disobedience. Summoned by Pharaoh, tinawag yung dalawang midwives. Imagine, the Pharaoh himself, the two women, nakita mo, ang galing magbukilya ang mga babae. Pero, matindi yung mga Hebrew woman. Napakalusog nila. Papanta pa lang kami, nailuwas na. Ibig sabihin, paano namin patayin halatang buhay na. Alam mo, tahimik si Pharaoh No reply. Walang reply si Pharaoh. Sabi ni Pharaoh, ganun ba? Wala siyang masabi. Dabi si dito, in a moral sense of the story, mga kapatid, they disobey the direct order of the Pharaoh because they know that it is an immoral order. Okay, 3,000 years had passed. In 1946, a Nazi war criminals on trial in Nuremberg all offered the defense that they were merely obeying orders given by a duly constituted and democratically elected government. Under the doctrine of national sovereignty, every government has the right to issue its own laws and order its own affairs. Ang tinutukoy dito, mga kapatid, yung mga generals ni Adolf Hitler, 10 of them were on trial, and ang depensa nila, we are just obeying orders. So we killed 3 million people because there's no choice but to follow orders. We are military people, we just follow orders. Alam mo, the International War Court decided hindi yun ang acceptable, ang logic, na because in order ka, papatayin mo 3 million people. So there's a new legal concept in the international law, namely a crime against humanity. That there are some orders that you should not be obeyed because they are immoral. The moral law may override the law of the state. If there's a conflict between the words of the master, Yahweh, and the words of disciple, the words of the master must prevail. And the story of the midwives who refused to carry out Pharaoh's order, mga kapatid, is historically, mga kapatid, or that, ito pa yung principle, to lie is better than to obey the immoral order. Nagsinungaling po sila. Nakita mo? Alam, maraming Christian, napaka-banal. Bawal magsinungaling. Yung vaccine card mo, yung ganyan. Sabi ko, ganun ba? Sabi ko, pag buhay na ang pinag-uusapan, pwede ka magsinungaling. Bigyan kita example. May taong, I will speak English. Example, this application of this principle. There is a man running inside your property, say, somebody is running after me with a gun, is going to kill me. What will you do? Close your gates or let the man, you can save the man by itago? Hide him. So the runner, the one who runs after him, says, have you seen the man? I will running after him. What will you do? Will you lie to save the man?
Yes.
Will you lie, tell a lie?
Yes.
Or, you say, nandiyan siya. Depende. Kung kilala mo yung tao na mabait, kung alam mong masamang tao talaga yun, Ay, sara mo na, di ba? Hindi, nakiusap nga sa iyo eh. Pwede ba itago mo ako? Which is a greater commandment? To lie or to save a life? So, if it's a life-saving, mga kapatid, it overrides any other commandment. Because the life is the greatest gift that ever God gave to me. Okay, that ends my teaching for today. I was blessed to have discovered that kind of teaching. Okay, I will stop my live and I will just put a very short finish. Finish. Okay, turn off all the live. Turn off. Okay. Hindi, turn off the live, yung mga internet, yung ano, hindi lights. Hindi ilaw, kundi yung live. Hindi ako articulate sa pronunciation. Hindi ako tinanggap sa call center. Okay. Okay. So, yan po yung ano. Yan. Okay. Okay yan. Wala na live. So yung, di ba sabi ko, yung decision natin, hindi makadesisyon hanggang hindi talaga nasorbe yung plan, no? So,
Microphone please. No video recording. No video recording. No video recording.
Walang video
okay. Kami po, ito po yung pinaka-clear ng Corillo. So we went to this one, Bordeos. So there is, ito yung sinaaljo dito sa Languyin ito. So if you travel here to here, it's 2.5 hours by motorcycle. So right now, ulan-ulan, magputik yung gaan, it's not possible by 4-wheel. If you travel Languyin to Bordeos, another 1 hour and 30 minutes. If you travel Bordeos to the end of Bordeos, which is the Panukulan, it's another 1.5 hour. Okay. So, we went here to, so, dito sa, ito, pag nakita nyo itong mga cove dito, itong mga cove, ito, okay? Ibig sabihin ito, the fishing, kasi food security, di ba? Ang fishing ground dito is 360 hours a year, you can fish. Fish cake. Ibig sabihin, may pagkain na dito, it's not affected by the typhoons kasi naka-cover siya, oh. Nandito lang yung mga fish cake. Malaki yan. So, napuntahan namin itong mga lugar, may mga palayan dito, may mga Adventist dito. So, positive. So, another thing is, Ayan. So, nakita mo itong river na to? So, from there, you travel 1.5 hour motorcycle, we reach here. Okay. Naligaw kami. Itanong nyo kay RR. Siya kayo kasama. Naligaw kami. Instead going from here to here, may naka-letter Y na kalsada. Nagkaliwa kami. Wala kasi ibang nag-travel, typhoon eh. Kami lang na nagta-travel eh, dahil kailangan eh. So, literally, we were lost here in the path, but Yahweh sent us guide, no? That even people are extending their help by guiding us. So we ended up going here. Ito yung pinaka-Nile River ng island. This is 10 kilometers long. Mahaba ito. So, dito kami na shortcut. So from here, sumakay kami ng bangka going to the bayan dito. So dito, tumira kami sa kapitan ng barangay and we ask all kinds of questions. Like, paano yung tanim, ganito, lahat. Mabubuhay ba yung palay? So, na-discover namin, sabi niya, dahil maalat yung tubig na to, hindi siya maganda sa tanim. Pero, pag nandito ka na, matamis na yung tubig. Okay. Pag dito, yung lupa, 100,000 per hectare. Pag nandito, 20,000 na lang yung per hectare. So from here, hindi na namin ito naabot. Wala lang tayo. Pero nalaman namin yung kwento. So from here, ito yung area na papuntang Panukulan Island. Panukulan Island. So ito yung area na hindi pa napuntahan. Itong area na to. So ngayon, ano yung report? Sa lahat ng pinupuntahan namin, ang tinatanong namin, mayroon bang bakanteng lupa na pwede magtanim ng prutas? Kasi palayan, sobrang daming palayan. Coastal area, may isda. Ang wala doon, prutas. Naalala ko si Joji. Joji, prutas ang hanap. Kaya ako prutas din eh. Ikot kami ng ikot. Halos buong area, palayan. So, yung Panukulan, hindi ko pa naikot. Pero may nag-offer din na next time. So, so we cannot go there until March or April pag summer. Kasi summer, babaybayan mo ba yung motor yan. Tsaka kung gusto nyo pumunta, makapunta. So therefore, yung island na ito ay hindi pa masabing 100% yan na. So, what's the next move? My next move, actually, nandyan na yung invitation sa akin, Mindoro. I'm going to Mindoro anytime soon. So, it could be next week or palagay ko, hindi possible next week. Dapat nga as soon as possible, pero since vacation time, we might as well spend the time with us together, our families. So, sayang, that's the only time we can fellowship, di ba? So, schedule January, first week, second week. We're going to Mindoro to explore. May contacts sa Mindoro, may torah keepers sa Mindoro. I have 3 contacts in Mindoro. So, Mindoro is known to be the food basket of the South. Yeah. Palayan, prutas, meron sa Mindoro. Tuna, fishing, kumpleto sa Mindoro. So the next move is survey yung Mindoro. Amen. So yun ang decision. Wait for the report in Mindoro. So ito pending report. Hindi naman tayo pwede magpagalos-galos lang agad eh. Choose the best answer, di ba? Okay, yun lang. So may I call on Brother Alvin to pray our traditional prayer and our blessing before we discuss things. Also, Nakar is possible by late January. My friend is inviting me to Nakar and positively, napakaraming bakanting lote doon. Murang-mura pa ngayon. Dahil wala pa. Masama pa yung pasala. Yun yung opportunity sa real estate kasi take advantage mo pag masama yung lugar, mahirap puntahan. The price is like very, very low. Pag may kalsada na yan, wala na yan. That's how you deal with real estate. Okay, Brother Alvin?
Let's pray.
Bye.
Let's pray. Blessed are you,